virtual closings, and I'm here today with a professional I've been dealing with for years here in Miami, Greg Herskowitz. Thank you so much for joining today. I am very excited today that you're here, and like I said, we're going to be covering in a very fast-paced method information about closings virtually, and also a little bit about the market and how we've been going lately. So, Greg, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me, Doris. Greg Herskowitz. I'm with Herskowitz Shapiro, and we're a full-service real estate and litigation firm in South Florida. I've been practicing now for over almost 23 years, and I specialize in residential commercial real estate.
Excellent, Greg. And like I said before, I've worked with Greg before. And as we talk about closings and the procedures of closing, we've come around a few things that we know people will benefit from. Not just if you're a buyer right now looking to buy a property, but also if you're an agent who has not experienced a virtual closing and it's a little confused, or you're just not quite sure what to expect. And the one thing I can tell you as a professional is we have to be very confident and very trusting on our knowledge so that we can project that knowledge and information to our customer, and that they can feel confident when dealing with us as agents and as an attorney. And that brings me to the next thing. So before we jump into the session, don't leave any sooner than you have to, because we have the 3 don'ts of legal questions. So don't miss that out. We're going to run those 3 don'ts at the end of this session. So let's start right in, okay? So tell me, Greg, why should a buyer hire an attorney instead of a title agent?
That's a great question. So what most people know in Florida, obviously, and we have some out-of-town buyers, especially now. One thing that's very important here that is different in other states, for example, in New York. In New York, you have, when you're buying a real estate transaction, you have an attorney, and separately you have a title company. Obviously, as everybody knows, here in Florida, attorneys are title agents. Okay, so we serve one role, and it's not a bifurcated or separate process. So me as an attorney doing a real estate transaction, especially on a residential, there's no additional fees that the buyers incur by using an attorney. I do not charge an attorney's fee typically when I'm dealing with a residential transaction. I charge a closing fee like every other title company. The advantage to that, though, is myself as an attorney, unlike a title agent who's not an attorney, I can offer advice. I can draft contracts. I review every single contract that a real estate agent sends me in advance, provide language. We talk about issues. I provide anything that they need, whether it's additional terms, an addendum, review the contract. And then throughout the closing process, I can draft an addendum, review an addendum, draft a post-occupancy agreement, a repair addendum, whatever it might be. I can take care of all that because I'm an attorney. And again, that does not fall on to the buyer in terms of additional fees or costs. So that's why it's very important, in my opinion, to use an attorney as opposed to just a title agent.
And you made some really good points there. I can tell you from my experience, I've been doing this for 18 years. I've worked with both attorneys and regular title agencies. And for some transactions, I guess you could say, okay, a regular title company would do. But I always tell my clients, if you have a choice, start with an attorney, because you never know where this transaction is going to take. When you're dealing with condominiums, and you know this, Greg, too, a lot of times they're going through an assessment or they're going through litigation themselves. And this is language that we as realtors are not prepared to give advice on. We can only advise our clients.
Yeah,
we're not allowed. We're not allowed. That's funny because a lot of clients tell you, can you read me the contract and explain every step? Well, I can't do that. I'm not an attorney. This was drafted by an attorney. So here is the perfect time for you to talk back to your attorney and answer this question. So I'm very happy that we answered that question specifically, because I deal with that question every time I'm ready to sign a contract.
And if I may provide some additional comments there, I get calls from real estate agents or buyers sometimes where the buyer chose a title company, an issue came about during the transaction, there's now a deposit that's contested, and they want to hire me. And so I look back and I see, not that I'm blaming title agents, but they can't do what attorneys can do during the transaction. So for example, keeping track of the critical dates, providing emails and advice to buyers so that you don't get to that point where you have a deposit dispute. We protect the agents, right? Title
Yeah.
companies cannot protect the agents, and there is no additional fees incurred by the buyers as a
And,
result. So
and,
it
and
definitely,
it's so true. I think that protection is the key word here, right?
yeah,
An attorney provides protection. We as agents bring in a lot of experience. So when an agent tells you, I think you should consider an attorney, you really should take that advice into consideration, because we've been doing this long enough to sometimes predict when a transaction might not be as simple as we may think. We don't want to scare a client. So a lot of work we do is behind doors. I will talk to you, Greg, right? And I'll tell you, hey, I'm dealing with this. What do you think? And here's extra support as an agent that I wouldn't get from a title agent. So again, very good one. I'm glad we answered that. Another question I have here, it's, and again, we're a South Florida market here. We're used to doing closings virtually. We've been doing this for many, many years. I remember when I did new construction back in 2005, and I was dealing with buyers from all over the world that had never been to Miami. Literally, they never even entered the state. So, or they didn't even speak English. So,
right.
We know how to handle this by mailaways, virtually, over the phone. We have been doing electronic signatures for years now. But can you tell me what kind of buyer or agent should expect when dealing with a virtual closing?
Yes. Well, there's two different types of transactions. Obviously, there's the cash transaction, and then there's the transaction that comes with the buyer getting financing. On the cash transaction, it's pretty simple, actually. We can actually have the buyer sign via DocuSign or any other electronic signature and a wire for the cash to close. That's on the buyer side. What a lot of agents usually get confused by is that doesn't also apply to the sellers. If the seller is a foreigner in another country, or just not here domestically but in another state, they have to get documents notarized, witnessed, and we need the originals. So we're able to get mobile notaries. If you are in, for example, Latin America or in Europe, you can get a civil notary with an official seal. Typically, you don't have to just go to the embassy or the consulate. So the good thing that we do in my office, and we work with a lot of international buyers and buyers that are out of town, is we identify that issue early on, and we start from the very beginning, finding out where they are, who we can put them in touch with. We have access to so many different notaries, not just throughout the country, but internationally. And we set that up so that we calendar, we have documents prepared way ahead of time, so we don't have this at the 11th hour. And then obviously when there's financing involved, you have to deal with, you can always sometimes do a power of attorney, where we'll get that done in advance if the lender allows it, so that someone can execute the documents for them here. Or we set up a mobile notary where we'll close on the actual closing date, but might not disperse until the following day. These are all different factors that you have to look at the very beginning.
Could you expand a little bit more on the mobile notary? This is a new thing. It seems like it's not new to us, but
Right.
it's becoming a new term, and I keep hearing that over and over again. A lot of people may not be familiar with that.
Absolutely. So mobile notary just means that it's not someone coming to my office and we're notarizing documents. It's actually somebody that will go to a person's house, a person's place of work, wherever they might choose to have a notary go to them. Now, the companies that we use, we typically will use ones that are big companies that are already authorized by our title underwriters. They're licensed, they're insured, they're bonded, so that if, God forbid, there was an issue, everyone's protected. Because what you have to also be careful about is which notary you're going to choose, because you also want to avoid the fraud component, right? And that's what we have to watch out for. So by using a notary company that is approved by the title underwriter, you're protected, right? You're used certain ways to identify people, driver's license, passport, whatever it might be. And these notary companies are licensed, insured, and bonded in case their mobile notary screws up. So that's very important. The other good thing is weekends, nights, early mornings, whatever the person needs to sign, we can accommodate them.
I think the keyword for this part of the topic would be preparation.
Yes.
As an agent, I need to prepare my client, and you as an attorney would prepare your client with all the questions and expectations. A lot of times, people don't like to disclose their personal life. They don't like to tell you, I'm going on a trip next month. They don't want to tell you, I'm buying a new house because I'm doing this other thing in my business. So, we need to be very smart on how we ask these questions. Explain to people the time frame, so they know that when they're entering into a contract. I like to tell people this, and if you go to my website, doris305.com, I have a section for consumers, sellers, and then buyers, and it explains exactly what to expect when you're a seller and how to prepare your home, and if you're a buyer, also how to prepare yourself and what the contracts look like, so you can actually preview them. In today's environment, everybody's online, everybody's more computer whiz than before. So I think that as an agent, to have all of these things in your website, it's smart, because you can avoid a long conversation and tiring your client over the phone. So what I do nowadays is I tell people, perfect, I'm going tomorrow, we'll go over the property, but if you have time tonight, just go to this section on my website, check out what to expect, and it will tell you how to prepare your home. Or check out what to expect when you're doing your closing. And believe it or not, people do come back with questions. Oh, I saw that I needed to 45 days for a closing. My agent, I didn't understand it was going to be 45 days. I'm going on a trip at the end of the month. Well, don't worry, we can do this virtually. So this is what this information come into place, preparation.
Yeah, and you know what else is important from my perspective, from the attorney title agent's perspective, is I know that some agents will wait, until the inspection period is over, 10 or 15 days to get me the contract. What I implore agents to do is to give me those contracts right away.
Yeah.
If the deal cancels for some reason during the inspection period, we're not going to charge the buyer. I'm not going. There's not going to be any non-refundable costs. But what's important is, as soon as I can get the contract, we can get in touch with the buyers or their sellers, identify what we need to do to make sure we're ready to close on time, the better. If I get it 15, 20 days in and it's a 30-day closing, it could create some issues.
Yeah. And again, preparation is key when it comes to
and communication. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm talking about this. One of the things that I wanted to explain to our viewers is where the market is here in South Florida. We're still doing closings. We're still doing transactions. Greg is just as busy. He's probably answering even more questions than before. But I can tell you this. I've noticed a lot of sellers are starting to relist properties that they have removed out of the market. And I just keep repeating this to people over and over again. List your home, because where you only had a few people maybe dedicating themselves, serious buyers looking online, people are bored right now. Everybody is looking online. Everybody has access to the internet to look at pictures, videos, virtual videos. And one of the things that Compass has done is put us at the top of the list for brokerage, because we've been doing all of this already ahead of most people, where people have different platforms as an agent. We're very computer savvy nowadays. So we have platforms with YouTube, or social media platforms are, 4 or 5 platforms right there. And then we have our own internal platforms for real estate. Compass has tied all of this together. I could go live right here from my Compass site. So, it makes work much easier for myself. So right now, I can sit down like this and go to a virtual open house with an agent live, and I can ask with my client. Let's say you're the client right now, Greg, you're the buyer, and you won't just see the pretty pictures online. I can say, look under the sink. I want to see the AC closet. I want to look at the closets. Get in the walk-in closet. I want to see how big the walk-in closet is. So you can do a lot of things that you may not think you can, that you have access to now. So I insist, if you are thinking of listing your home, or you had your property listed and removed it, you're making a big mistake. For example, in my neighborhood, which is the islands right behind me, that's North Bay Village. We're only 3 islands in the middle of Biscayne Bay between Miami and Miami Beach. And we're, 5 minutes from the ocean. So we had, in my island, in Treasure Island, we had around 15 homes for sale. Right now, there's only 6 homes from sale. And those homes are selling fast. So there were 7. That home is already gone last week that was listed. Tomorrow, I'm doing a tour video where we're looking at a lot of these properties and what they can finance for, to educate more of the buyers out there. But if there's one thing I can tell you, the serious buyers are out there. So if you're not listing right now because you're concerned about, access to your property, don't be. We are prepared, we're trained, we know what we're doing, and we've been doing virtual closings and, closings away from Miami for years. So there's no better team to help you than agents in South Florida and attorneys like Greg, of course, that are here to help. And with that, I want to enter our next question, which is, based on all the changes that we see nowadays and how life is going, Greg, can you tell us what are the challenges you see buyers and agents, facing nowadays?
Interesting, because the very beginning of the COVID-19, when down here in South Florida, I noticed there were some contracts that were not going through, or people were getting a little bit of cold feet. But I can tell you that as this has become more of the norm, right, and as people now are feeling better about things, over the last couple weeks, we're getting purchases, contracts coming in, not at the same rate that it was before, but definitely at a very healthy rate. Contracts are coming in, closings are happening. I would say that one of the biggest challenges is really just knowing if the buyer is going to have any consequence with regards to their job. Lenders are looking a little bit more carefully at verifying employment. Has the buyer been still, once you sign the contract to when you close, they want to verify that right before closing, nothing's changed. You haven't been furloughed, your compensation hasn't been reduced, et cetera. So that is probably the biggest thing. But in terms of everything else, my office is still very efficient. I actually have 4 people in my office today. I'm here. No one's near each other. I'm in my office with the door closed, but everyone has their masks on, and we're very careful. But I have other staff that are working from home. They might have young kids, and we haven't skipped a beat. I've already done 2 closings today. Both actually, what we did is we got the package. We emailed the package to the buyers. I got on the phone with them last night. I went over the entire loan package with them. They understood everything. Then this morning, one of my paralegals highlighted every place where they sign. I walked downstairs to my building. They both, the husband and wife, drove up with masks. They stayed in their car. I walked down with an N95 mask. I handed it to them. They brought their own blue pens. They signed. I looked at the documents, made sure they were signed correctly. I waved to them and went back upstairs, and we dispersed. They even emailed us our driver's licenses. I had another closing today where it was a mobile notary. So I had a notary go to somebody's house. It was actually a condominium. So they met them downstairs in the lobby with masks. I had already gone over the documents with them before, and we're going to fund and disperse no problem. So we're able to do any of this. I mean, I've gone to people's houses and I've handed them through the door. I've waited outside, whatever it takes. We've had no problems closing deals. So I can't say there's that many hurdles right now. I mean, we're moving along. Lenders are lending, and appraisers and inspection companies, all those things are happening.
Sure is. And one of the things that I would like to expand on is what you touched on, contracts, as far as, a challenge. Before it becomes a challenge, we talked a little bit about that before, and I want you to expand a little bit about how do we start as agents in a friendly manner to set these expectations of a possible delay of closing?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think what's very important is know who your buyer and sellers are, right? And understand who the agents are that you're going to work with. I think it's very important for listing agents who represent the sellers to educate the sellers. Look at your buyer also when the buyer comes in, and what does the buyer do for a living, for example? I mean, be able to anticipate if there's going to be any issues. And then the same thing with your buyer's agent. Know your buyers. Really, really make sure on the buy side that they're using a reputable lender. That's very, very important. If you can look at all these things, the 2 agents can communicate with one another. I think you're going to have a much greater success rate than if you don't have a reliable lender, or you just, you have one agent that is uncooperative or not reasonable. I think you have to look at the new COVID-19 addendum and try to spot the issues ahead of time. That's what's very important.
You're absolutely right. And I think that we also need to put a little bit of responsibility on the client itself. As a buyer or seller, you need to ask those questions. How are you prepared to handle my listing today? And a good agent will be able to give you a presentation of all the ways that they're going to make your home visit safe. All the information is going to be accurate, and all your presentations virtually are going to be professional like this. Today we took the time, we create backgrounds. I have lights, we have professional microphones, professional cameras. There's a lot of equipment that as realtors have to invest really to keep us up to date. And I think that's one of the things that as a client, you have to wonder and ask, verbally say, how are you prepared to handle my closing? How are you prepared to handle, visitors? And that's a way to avoid challenges as they present themselves. So we're doing great. We're 20 minutes into this meeting and we've gone over all the main topics. So I'm very excited.
By the way, Doris, before you go on, I'm going to say this very quickly because you brought up a very good point. One thing I've noticed, and it's very important for the listing agents to tell the sellers in advance, is for them to understand that they're going to have people coming into the house doing inspections and appraisals and things like that, and making them feel at ease that you're going to have people that are going to wear masks and all these things. I think they need to know that in advance well.
Yes, and you know what? Agents, I've seen a lot of clever agents that post booties, gloves, and masks at the door in a very pretty basket in their pictures, in their actual property pictures, so that when people are looking online, they can feel the satisfaction of, okay, this house, I know that at least they've been very good and everything clean. And, that's a lot of things that, a true professional will know and will create a safe space for them to work also, because we also have families, right, Greg? We go home, we want to, we're doing this because we love what we do for a living, but we want to live and we want to enjoy our city, our friends. So, this has been great, Greg, because I like to give not just general information. I think we've gone into very specific topics. And one of the things that I also wanted to go over with you was, when we talk about contracts again, and I'm sorry, I keep going back. One of the things that we mentioned before in our earlier conversation was about what happens if the person, it's in the middle of a transaction and they lose their job, right? So maybe you can expand a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So as everybody knows or should know who's watching this this live presentation, you have usually a period, call it 30 days is the standard to get a loan approval. And during this time, the buyer has to apply for the loan. Now, if the buyer between the effective date of the contract and the loan approval period, for example, loses their job or gets furloughed or their salary gets cut in half or whatever it might be, and they don't get approved for the loan, then they're safe. They can cancel, they can get their deposit back because obviously they weren't able to obtain a loan approval within the loan approval period. However, the issue that you need to really look at and examine carefully is what happens if you get to that loan approval period and you as the agent or your buyer provides notice that the loan has now been approved. And now let's say you have another 15 days until the closing date. If the lender, well, not if, the lender will verify employment before closing, right before closing, usually within 24 hours. If the buyer has since been terminated, been furloughed, or salary has been changed in any way, and now the lender pulls that loan and will not issue the loan because of that, unless you have additional language or an addendum in the contract, your buyer is unprotected at this point. And so just because the buyer loses his or her job or their job changes in some way that affects their ability to get the loan, if you've already gotten past the loan approval period, your buyer's deposit is in jeopardy. Now, none of us know what's really going to happen when the courts finally open up and rule on this. People are trying to claim force majeure for every reason under the sun right now, but we don't know how the courts are going to rule. And in my opinion, I think it's going to be, it's unpredictable. But at this time, it's better to actually take proactive measures so that there is no ambiguity and you can get the buyer's deposit back.
And that circles right back to the first question of why should we hire an attorney like Greg? Right?
Well, it's true. I mean, and these are things like I've helped countless agents in the last couple of weeks drafting an addendum, to address this very issue. And by the way, I've included also on cash transactions, if you're concerned about an association that isn't letting people move in or move out, and that's happened, I put that into language into an addendum as well. So there's so many different so many different pitfalls here that you have to be careful and watch for within the transaction.
And as we're going into this, let's give everybody that has been watching, everyone who's been watching this whole time, they've been waiting probably, besides all this information, for the 3 don'ts of Greg. So Greg, tell us, what are the 3 don't do this?
Well, okay, so Doris had asked me to give 3 don'ts, and I said only 3. She said, well, give 3 that you can think of that come up or have come up in recent transactions. So I'm going to do that, but I'm happy to talk to anyone after this about the other don'ts, the things that, and I've given many presentations on this, and I'm happy to discuss with any agent anytime to protect your clients. So really, we're talking now permits, code violations. Those things are not title issues, and I'm sure a lot of agents know this. They do not affect the marketability or the insurability of titles. So if you don't have affirmative language in the contract that says that the seller shall close out any open or expired permits or satisfy any open-sided code violations, if you get past the inspection period and a permit comes, it shows that there's an open or expired permit or a code violation, and there was no language in the contract to protect the buyer inherits that issue. The buyer cannot cancel. I, as a title agent, can still convey title. I can still insure title to the buyer, even if there's an open or expired permit. So especially now that it's taking just maybe a little bit longer to get the permit search report back, or if we find out there's an open expired permit and it's taking a little bit longer for the seller or a little more difficult for the seller to close them out because the county buildings aren't as open as they were or available as they were, you're going to put your buyer in a bad spot. So always be cognizant of that. Try to put in additional language. You can email or call me if the seller's not in agreement with language obligating them to close it out. I can give you other language that maybe is more acceptable to both parties. But that goes back, Doris, to what I was saying is give me the contract immediately, because I will order the lien and permit search report immediately. If the deal cancels, I can cancel that report and I don't have to seek reimbursement from anybody. So please do not wait. Let us order that and address these things in advance.
We don't want that new kitchen to ruin the deal.
Exactly right.
You fell in love with. All right, real quick, let's run through the next 2.
Sure. All right. So the other one is if the seller is an entity, okay, whether it's a corporation or an LLC, some agents don't always look at the following. Is the LLC or the corporation or whatever entity it is it still active? Okay. First, as a listing agent, you want it to make sure it's active, because technically, if it's not active, how can we have that entity, whoever's in president or officer or manager of that entity, sign the contract? The buyer's agent needs to look at that too. You want to have a binding contract. You want to make sure that it's active, and you also want to look up, for example, on Sunbiz, or if it's a Delaware corporation or something else, you want the seller to provide documentation showing, is the person signing that on behalf of that entity, that contract, do they have the authority to bind the entity? And then part B of that is make sure as a listing agent that the seller still has, or if they never had, that they will have a bank account, because title agents and attorneys right now, we cannot disperse money to the individuals. There are some nuances which we can discuss later, but they must have an account open under their name of their entity and receive seller proceeds that way. And so we always ask that at the beginning, because we don't want that to become an issue at the 11th hour.
And real quick, number 1, we're under a minute.
Number 1, loan approval. Everybody, you have a loan approval period. You must, as the buyer's agent, you must do something by that loan approval period. You either need to provide notice that the loan's been approved, provide notice that the loan has not been approved, ask for an extension, and if they don't grant it, make sure you send notice of cancellation. Okay? Don't sit there and do nothing, because if you do nothing and that period expires, then it's deemed that the loan has been obtained, and you have not provided notice either positively or negatively. You have not said loan's been approved or loan's been denied, and then your buyer's stuck. Okay, very, very important. And let me just add to that. I'm talking fast now, but let me just add to that. If that loan approval has multiple conditions in it, okay, by providing that loan approval, that notice to the seller, It doesn't matter what those conditions are. You have now put your client's deposit at risk. If there's a condition of a tax return that's needed or improve their credit score, those conditions will not save the buyer's deposit if you provided the notice that the loan's been approved. So we certainly want to pay very close attention to it, use an attorney so we can advise you or your clients appropriately. And that includes saving the condition and making the exception about their employment that it remains unchanged. That would be my third don't.
And we did it on all of this under 30 minutes. We're at the end of this session. Greg, I really appreciate all the information you've provided, all the questions you've answered. This is information that we deal with on a daily basis ourselves as agents. So I'm sure a lot of agents out there have found clarification to some of the questions they already had and experiences that they probably would have liked to avoid. So with this, we make our lives easier, our clients' life better, and we make the home buying process what it should be, less stressful and all about family and a good time, right? So with that said, you know, you're going to see all of our information in the comments here. By the way, Greg, you have lots of excellent reviews in our comments right now in our live feed. Everybody's just raving about Greg. Anyone out there for Doris? I'm just saying. But
I'll send you a comment, Doris.
There you go. Thank you, Greg. But, you know, we're here to help. We live this every day. We're South Floridians. We know how to deal with international market. We know how to deal with the local buyers and sellers. So if you're ready to list your home virtually, I'm your girl. And we have the team on this side with Greg to make sure that everything is done the best way and that your transaction is secure. And that your home and yourself, you're safe and that you're happy and proud of the purchase you made. So thank you all for joining us today. If you still have questions or anything else, just put it on the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe and also check out Greg's page. And again, you can find me at Doris305, Doris305.com. And Greg, where do they find you? What is your number and where are you?
Absolutely. So my direct line in my office is 305-423-1258. It goes to my cell now. And when you call me, I'll give you my cell as well. I'm always accessible. You can also email me at Greg, Greg, at hslawfl.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. I will put your contact information also here. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll be doing more sessions like this. So send in your questions and your comments. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, Doris.
Bye.